Hey guys, it's me, TheTacticalBrit, and this video is presented by EA Game Changers. Now, I was recently lucky enough to head out to Stockholm, Sweden to go and play Battlefield 5 Firestorm and capture it for you guys to show you what it's all about, and today I get to bring you that content. Today's footage also features my first win in Firestorm with Flakfire Gaming. Now, I want to discuss what exactly makes Battlefield 5 Firestorm different and worth playing. There are so many Battle Royale games that have been entering the scene, and it's really difficult to say what it is that makes one or another worth playing. So today I'm going to run through everything that Battlefield 5 does differently with Firestorm, and more importantly give you my opinions on whether or not this is worth your time and is it a good mode to play. So to start off with, in general, I actually really enjoyed Firestorm. It was a really great experience. Firestorm effectively combines everything you love from Battlefield and Battlefield 5 with everything you'd expect from a Battle Royale game. And it's quite different in the sense that it removes a lot of the metas that can kind of make Battle Royale games difficult or frustrating. For example, camping in buildings is completely gone. Why? Because if somebody's camping in a building, you blow the building up. It's the Battlefield environment and you have those options available to you. So let's kick off this list about what makes it different. Well, number one, it's definitely got a larger team play dynamic. You know, lots of games now have Battle Royales that don't necessarily focus on squads and duos very well, but this has, and I think Apex Legends is a good rival in terms of having characters that work together in squads, in the sense that in Battlefield, you have a unit that if they work well together in both vehicles, on land, on sea, utilizing all of their surroundings to the best of their ability and coordinating attacks like blowing up buildings to flank an enemy, you can really pull together some really great things. And that kind of focus on a team play dynamic is really important. And this is backed up because in the game there's actually dynamic objectives like opening safes, like busting vehicles out of safes. There's also supply drops that appear on objectives that you have to capture like you would in a normal conquest game. And all of these things introduce a dynamic of team play that's much more important and much more significant than other Royale games in my opinion. And I think this is a really good move, and I think those who play squads and duos are really going to appreciate some of the stuff they're going to see in Firestorm. The next thing that makes Battlefield 5's Firestorm different is pacing. Now, a lot of people have come into question as to whether or not a 64 player count on such a large map works. Well, the solution and answer to that is that Firestorm already displays the first zone and you're locked to that segment for the duration of that game. The Firestorm is already surrounding a large ring in the map, and the full 64 player group will have to land in that location. And it works really well. The pacing of the game is fantastic. Most players will agree that were there at the event that it never really felt too slow or too fast. It felt like it was going just right. You had time to loot, you had time to engage, but you also had to be very wary of the Firestorm. Next up is of course Battlefield elements, and I describe it as Battlefield elements because this encompasses a number of things. Number one, there's the gunplay. Now, it's slightly different in Battlefield 5 because there is armor in Battlefield 5 Firestorm in the form of vests, as well as armor plates that you can put inside those vests, almost like a shield battery in Apex Legends. Now, it's really important that the time to kill is relatively similar to Battlefield 5. Of course, it is slightly longer because you do have armor, but ultimately it feels really good. It feels like people who appreciate a good TTK in the games like PUBG will find a home here quite nicely. And if you found yourself being a little bit put off by how long the TTK is in Apex Legends, this will be the home for you. It strikes a really nice spot, and of course it has all of the Battlefield 5 gunplay elements like recoil control. Most of the guns handle almost identically to what they do in Battlefield 5, and because of that it works really well. Likewise, we have the Battlefield style server systems and stuff as well, so with a bit of luck with the 64 player count, we're going to see some really good netcode readings from the likes of Battle Nonsense, and although we were in a closed environment so it's difficult to tell, I spoke to some of the developers and they believe that the game will run really well in terms of networking sides, which is something that is a huge complaint in other Royale games, which I'm excited to see. And of course the big one which is most important is destruction. Destruction is now in a Royale game. You can blow up walls, you can blow up tanks, you can blow up ceilings, you can blow up buildings. It's all there and it's really appreciated in Battlefield 5 because Firestorm kind of tackles a lot of the problems we've seen in Royale games with the camping metas. You can just roll through a building and people will have to get out. And another part of this is that the actual Firestorm itself, when it closes and the ring starts getting smaller, once it makes contact with buildings, they collapse. So people will have to leave buildings in order to get out in time so they don't get killed by debris. So it forces much faster and more intelligent gameplay from players, and this is something that I think is really strong, and I really enjoyed that move. One thing I forgot to mention as well is the actual call-ins. So you can use things like airstrikes, V1s, vehicle call-ins, and all sorts. And these are quite difficult to find, but they are in the game, and I think they're quite good. Another important distinction is a much larger incorporation of vehicles, which is different in Battlefield 5 Firestorm. We've seen stuff like helicopters in Blackout, we've seen Fortnite try every kind of vehicle that they can possibly conjure up, but in Battlefield 5 they just make sense, and they work really well too. There's a whole plethora of 17 different vehicles that you can use. The helicopter acts as a transport vehicle. It's like an experimental World War II helicopter that they've used, just to be a bit more fun and a bit more out there, and it's quite fun. And it creates the sandbox that we're used to in Battlefield 5. We're used to, tanks blowing helicopters out of the sky. We're used to people pulling off some insane kills with like C4 and Panzerfaust and all sorts. And that kind of stuff is amplified in Firestorm because we have so many different kinds of vehicles. We have the amphibious vehicles, we have tanks, we have helicopters, we've got really fast cars as well as a tractor, which is just the meme at this point. And ultimately, all of these vehicles combine together to give you a really traversable experience, and also one that's really fun, because you can string things together like a C4 tank, or like a C4 off of a helicopter and detonate. All of these things are possible, and that sandbox environment is really brought to life in Firestorm, and it's something that I think we've almost been missing in Battlefield 5 in a way. And adding on to all of that, we also have the fact that these vehicles are balanced. I know lots of people are curious as to why vehicles are in the game and whether or not they'll be able to balance the tank, and the answer to that is yes. They do, once they start taking damage, become a little less maneuverable, and of course there's fuel as well, so you have to keep refueling your tank, and it also only has limited ammunition, and all these things combined can make a tank very powerful, but if a team hasn't resourced correctly to find stuff to look after the tank, they will struggle, and naturally lots of players in the game can also pick up things like TNT and Panzerfaust to use on buildings and vehicles as well. So all in all, although they are a powerful element, they are balanced, and I wouldn't be too concerned about that, and it's something that I felt worked. Now likely there will be some growing pains once it reaches the public, but I thought I was pretty impressed with how they were when we first played them. Now on to one of the most important ones in my opinion, and that is the actual Firestorm ring itself, and this is definitely different from other Battle Royale games. Now, in other Royale games, it's questionable as to whether or not this ring does enough damage, it's questionable as to whether or not it causes you enough problems, and in Firestorm, there's definitely a sense of urgency. This thing will set you on fire, and it does do a lot of damage, it does set you on fire, and you will have to heal repeatedly to make it out of the ring. But more importantly as well, it collapses buildings, and it forces people to leave the buildings they're in. It forces conflict between groups of buildings and groups of players that are just camping, trying to, stick it out and see who's going to leave the building first. Well, now you have to. You can't just sit there in PUBG, keep healing in the zone and wait for somebody to leave the building so you're safe and they're not. These buildings are going to collapse on top of you. It destroys effectively everything in its path, and I'm pretty sure it even gets rid of loot as well. So people who are using the zone to their advantage, or trying to, won't have that opportunity. The Firestorm as well makes it very difficult for people outside of the zone to engage with people inside of the zone. There's a thick layer of smoke that stops this from happening, and those people who are on fire outside the zone aren't very visible to those who are inside the zone either, and ultimately it just stops the really frustrating and annoying gameplay where people will just camp in the zone, come in and kill you. So to wrap it off, I just want to say that I really did enjoy Firestorm. I think it's a really good experience. I think it combines a lot of the Battlefield experience with a lot of what we really enjoy from Royale games, and I'm excited to see what happens to it in the future. I really hope that more people get to see this product, because I do think it can rival the likes of PUBG, because it appeals to a really good sort of core/hardcore audience that wants something that's a bit more gritty, that wants something that's a bit more challenging, and I like to see where it goes in the future. Now, I do want to wrap this up as well by saying that a lot of the things are quite similar as well. Of course, you will be dropping in a plane. You will be seeing multiple tiers of weapons. Now, the weapons themselves all do the same amount of damage regardless of their rarity. So, if you find an assault rifle that's level 1, an assault rifle that's level 3, and they're both an STG, it's fine, it will still do STG damage. It's just that the level 3 one will have certain attachments and certain benefits like faster reload and stuff that the level 1 one won't. And ultimately, you know, stuff like that is very similar to what we've seen in other games. There is a semi sort of kind of Apex style ping system. You can ping weapons, you can ping locations. The only thing you can't ping at the moment is danger, but I imagine they'll probably add that in quite soon. And yeah, the kind of supply drop stuff you see as well from planes is there, but ultimately most of the supply drops come from the in-game stuff like the safes and the vehicle breakouts and the objectives, which I actually think is a much more fun way of doing it with like an objective capture system. But ultimately, that's about it for this video today, guys. I've got other Firestorm content available on the channel as well, so feel free to check that out. As always, troops, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you again soon in another video.
We do have some guys behind us over there, yeah. Danger close on the ping. 3 guys on my ping. I think there's still one left unless you got the other guy.